Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today is going to be the third in what's kind of been a little mini-series the last couple of days, talking about some teams in the NBA that had some rough starts to the season, but have been better recently within the last couple of weeks and have gotten some big wins. We've talked about the Miami Heat, yesterday we talked about the Dallas Mavericks, and today we are going to talk about the Denver Nuggets. This is still a team that is only 7th in the Western Conference, and was a team that you would have expected to be a top 3, top 4 seed in the West this season, along with the two LA teams, and then whoever you thought should have been in there between Dallas, who of course, as we've talked about yesterday, have underperformed so far, but are on a very hot streak, and then the Suns could have been in that conversation as well. With that being said, Denver have been much better as of late. They've now won 3 games in a row, 6 of their last 10, and had a massive blowout win against the Milwaukee Bucks last night. And with that being said, the Nuggets have definitely been better as of late. I was one person who was a bit skeptical of this team coming into the season. I thought their playoff performances were a bit of an over-evaluation of how good this team was. I didn't think the play of Jamal Murray was replicable, although I don't think many people thought it was, because that was just absurd, the level of play we were seeing from Jamal Murray in the playoffs, in the bubble last season. And then the loss of Jeremy Grant was going to be big. Now, I was skeptical of Jeremy Grant getting as big of a contract as he did in Detroit, and if Denver had to pay him that much, I didn't really knock them for not giving him that type of money. But with that being said, obviously Jeremy Grant was very important for that team from an energy standpoint, a rebounding, a bit of offensive production, and most importantly, his wing defense on a team that was a bit devoid of other wing defense, and that's still a big question mark I have from this team, given that their only decent wing defender on this team is Jamal Murray. Barton doesn't really have the size for that. He's more of a guard, of course, / small forward in those roles, and I wouldn't really want Will Barton to be my guy covering the likes of LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, although I'm sure it will happen, especially for a team like the Clippers that has Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but it's definitely not ideal. Michael Porter Jr. isn't a great defender himself. And then outside of that, they don't really have any other wings that have those abilities other than JaMychal Green, and Paul Millsap's just too old at his age. With that being said, this team is still doing well. They're definitely on the up over the last couple of weeks, and the MVP caliber play of Nikola Jokic is a big part of that. And I think that's where we have to start when we start talking about this team. But before we get into that, if you guys do enjoy the video, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And let's get right into it. And so we are 35 games into the season now. We are essentially at the midway point, 1 game off for the Denver Nuggets to the exact midway point of a reduced season this year. And Jokic's scoring has absolutely leaped this season. He's gone from 20 points a game the last 2 years to now 27 points per game this season. His assist totals are up to 8.6 a game, up from 7, and his rebound totals up to 11. His efficiency from 3 has gone up 10%. It's gone from 31% to 42%, while shooting 57% from the field this year, up from 53%. So he is shooting at a high volume, scoring at a high level, while increasing his efficiency. And can't get any better than that. Meanwhile, he is rebounding the ball more, he's assisting the ball better. He is playing slightly more minutes per game, but his steal numbers are up as well. His turnover numbers are still only at 3 a game, while getting as many assists as he is at 8.6. You really can't go wrong with that, right? I still have question marks about Nikola Jokic's defense, his lateral quicks, his pick and roll ability, and the fact that you do need a good defensive center in this league, in my opinion, to be able to win a title unless your talent is just absurdly good outside of that. And this year might be an exception to that, because some of the contenders don't have great defensive centers. Denver, although I don't know if we're considering them a contender, but certainly are one of the better teams in the league, don't have a great defensive center with Nikola Jokic. Now, Jokic might be an exception to that rule because he's an MVP-type player. Brooklyn Nets is another example. DeAndre Jordan is just not a great center anymore. But that team just has so much absurdly good talent that maybe they can overcome that. So maybe my exception to that will come into play this season, but it's very rare, and I find it hard to see in most seasons teams that have a bad defensive center win the title. I think that's very important. I don't think the center position is that important in the grand scheme of things in the league anymore, but having good defense at the rim at that position I think is very valuable. And so we'll see how that plays through with Nikola Jokic throughout the rest of the season. Another person, of course, we need to talk about is Jamal Murray. And, of course, we don't have Bubble Murray because we were never going to get Bubble Murray back. I mean, what we saw from him in the bubble last year was just absurd and something we'll probably never see again from him in his career. Really, realistically. He was putting up 26.5 points per game while shooting 45% from deep and 50% from the field, putting up 6.6 assists, 4.8 rebounds per game. I don't think we'll ever see that from him again. That was just absurdly good. And he's still been good this season. He's putting up nearly 22 points a game, which is a few more than last season. His efficiency is up, shooting 40% from 3 up from 35, and 48.5% from the field, while getting 4.6 assists and 4.2 rebounds. He's not the main creator on this team, right? He's a scorer. Jokic is the main creator. There's no doubt about that, although Jamal Murray does still create a bit. But Jamal Murray's scoring is really good. His shot selection still is a bit weird. Him and Pascal Siakam kind of fall into a group. Sometimes they make shots more difficult than they need to, and they're good at making those difficult shots sometimes, but on nights where those difficult shots aren't falling, it looks tough, and it looks rough for them. But as a fellow Canadian, I'm a big fan of Jamal Murray, and I'm glad to see him having a good season again. And, yeah, of course we're not getting Bubble Murray, but he's been very valuable to this team. Another important piece of this team, of course, this season in an increased role with Jamal Murray ran off the team, is Michael Porter Jr. His minutes have gone up 12 per game this year. He's started 18 of the 25 games for the Denver Nuggets and starting more and more recently. And his efficiency has only dipped slightly in increased minutes and increased volume. His efficiency, his field goal percentage has gone down about 1.5%, and you could say the same for his three-point percentage, while putting up 14 points per game and getting 7 rebounds. His free throw efficiency has also gone down a fair bit, but I have no doubts that'll go back up in due time. There's a lot of talent here with Michael Porter Jr. There's no doubt about that. We knew that with him coming out of high school. We knew that with him coming out of college. The only concern was his health, of course, right? And he's obviously missed some game time for health reasons this year. Thankfully, not back or physical related in the sport nature and due to the virus, and he is back now and performing well. But there's still a lot to work on for Michael Porter Jr. But with that being said, the fact that he is as good as he is right now with a lot to work on shows that he has a high ceiling. His defense, will it ever be great? Probably not. But it would be nice to see that end of the game improve for him. It would be very nice to see his playmaking improve a little bit. He is averaging less than 1 assist a game right now. So just to be able to find the open man a little bit more on drives and cuts and whatnot would be very, very valuable for him and the team. And just his general off-ball offense as well. Surely it's a work in progress, and it's not going to happen overnight. But his off-ball offense, being able to find the open spaces, make cuts, make those decisions off the ball, the more he improves in that, the more he's going to be able to get themselves in more scoring opportunities and help the team in that way. And I think that's probably the next step for him on offense. Next up, Will Barton, who's actually stayed healthy this year. And that's not something we've heard for Will Barton in a couple seasons. This is someone who played 43 and 58 games the last 2 seasons, and then 81 the year before that, but only 60 the year before that. It's someone who's struggled with injuries, but has been able to stay healthy so far this season and be a very important part for this team. He's very valuable for them as a 3-and-D guy. He's averaging about 11.5 points a game this year, so his shooting numbers, or his point totals, are way down this year, but he is shooting a little bit less and playing a little bit less minutes as well, so it kind of just goes hand in hand. His efficiency from the field is down a little bit, but he is still shooting 38% from 3 and averaging around that steal-a-game mark that we've come accustomed to from him, while putting up 4 rebounds and 3 assists. He's just kind of a do-it-all guy on this team. And him being healthy is very important for them on the defensive end. He is one of their better defensive 2-3 guys, although he's not elite at that level. He is one of their better guys on a team that doesn't have great defensive players in those areas. And I think he's a very important role player for this team. Someone else that's had a nice step forward as their backup guard this year is Monte Morris. He's averaging about 10.5 points per game while putting up 3.4 assists. His efficiency from 3 is still at 37%, right where you would like it, and 47.5 from the field. He's just a nice, good backup point guard, right? And at 25 years of age, he still does have some room to develop. There's no doubt about it. He just comes in, gets the job done, gets the buckets, creates a little bit. It's a valuable piece for the team. Paul Millsap's an interesting one, right? He's still valuable, there's no doubt about it, and he still starts with this team. He started all 26 games he's played in so far this season. But he's down to 24 minutes a game, similar to what he was playing last year. And on pretty good efficiency still, 52% from the field and 41% from three. He's efficient in what he does. He comes in, he gets his rebounds, he can make for you a little bit. He does have a bit of underrated playmaking ability. And he can still offer you not bad defense, but his lateral quicks just aren't there anymore. His athleticism obviously has dropped, right? He's now 36 years of age. He's not a spring chicken anymore like he was in his best days with Utah and with Atlanta. But he's still a valuable piece for this team, and someone that they definitely... They benefit a lot from more than just the on-court stuff from him, right? Obviously, he's quite valuable on the court. He can offer a lot in terms of rebounding, some offensive production, and a bit of defensive help. But his intangibles of leadership, of experience, of growth, in that sense, is very important for this team, especially with young players like Jamal Murray, like Bol, like Michael Porter Jr. That's very valuable for this team. Moved along to some of the other role players that have kind of brought themselves up on this team this season, or have just been around and doing their thing. Gary Harris, of course, has to be one of them. Another key backup guard for this team off the bench. Or pardon me, not off the bench. I'm thinking of Campazzo here for some reason. Gary Harris, 10 points per game this year. Started all 19 games he's playing 30 and a half minutes a night. He's shooting only 32% from deep this season, and he only shot 33% from deep last year. It's been his worst efficiencies from three in a couple of years, really since his rookie season, which is not ideal for Denver Nuggets. But he's still doing his thing out there, and hopefully he can start to improve his three-point shooting a little bit more. JaMychal Green was brought in for the LA Clippers as the so-called Jeremy Grant replacement as far as that wing defense goes. And he definitely hasn't been terrible. He's averaging about 9 points per game, shooting 43% from deep, which is a high for him in his career, which has been very useful. And there's no doubt he's not Jeremy Grant on any end of the floor, but he still is very good, getting you 6 rebounds a game. He's doing a lot of what Jeremy Grant could do for you, and he's been a very important player for them. PJ Dozier is another guy who gets a bit of PT for them off the bench. They seem to have a lot of good backup guards. I wouldn't be surprised if in any trade that happens with the Denver Nuggets, one of these guys get dealt. There's a lot of depth with guards in this team, right? Barton, Monte Morris, Gary Harris, PJ Dozier, RJ Hampton, and Campazzo. There's a lot of good guards on this team that are still getting PT. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see one of them get moved if there is any Denver Nuggets trade that occurs. But PJ Dozier's been putting up about 8 points a game this year, shooting 40% from deep. Can't really be mad at that. Campazzo is fun to watch. He's 29 years of age, signed as an international free agent this summer. His PT has just gone up throughout the season. His play looks to be considerably better every night. His playmaking ability and his craftiness and elusiveness with the ball, in that sense, is so fun to watch. Only getting 2 assists per game, but his playmaking ability is so good, you would swear that number is much higher. He's only getting 16 minutes a night, but 38% from deep, 40% from the field, 5.5 points per game. He's a fun player, and he's a pretty solid player for this team off the bench, and definitely one of their best creators as far as their guard goes. And then RJ Hampton and Bol are the young guys in the team, right? And they haven't been getting much playing time. There's no doubt about it. RJ Hampton only 9 minutes a game in 24 games, and Bol 5.6 minutes per game in 15 games. And, Bol's been disappointing this year, right? Obviously, he hasn't played much. He's only played 15 games, 2 starts, 5.6 minutes per game. 1.9 points per game, under 1 in every other category as far as rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, you name it. There's a reason Denver obviously aren't playing him much, right? They're obviously not liking what they're seeing in practice and what they think he's going to translate to. And that's too bad, because pre-injury in college, we thought that he was going to be good, and the hope would have been that if he could stay healthy, that Bol would be able to develop into something, and so far that hasn't happened yet. And so it'd be nice to see him get to a place where he can play and see if he can develop. But as of right now, that just hasn't happened, and it's too bad, because there's no doubt that Bol would be fun to see dominate in this league and be very valuable to someone if he could get to that potential that we thought he could. Now, as we've mentioned, there's no doubt that Denver have a very good offense. They are 5th in the league in terms of offensive efficiency. That is never going to be a concern for them with Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and then all the surrounding pieces of Will Barton, Gary Harris, Michael Porter Jr. That offense is very good, right? There's no doubt about it. The thing that's always going to be of the biggest concern for Denver is going to be whether they can hold up a respectable enough defense that their offense can get them over the hump. And so far this season, they are 18th in defensive efficiency. And that's probably what you could label as the key thing that has kept them away from being able to be where they would have expected to be, a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, and probably more than a few games over 500 like they are right now. At 20 and 15, they would have expected to be a little bit higher, probably a few games ahead of where they are, and competing up around with the Lakers and the Clippers. Because they've always been a good regular season team, right? Their offense has been able to carry through the regular season with respectable defense. But 18th in the league in defensive efficiency, of course, is not bad, but it's definitely not great either, right? I mean, Chicago's the team ahead of you, and Detroit's the team behind you, with Orlando and Cleveland being the teams behind that. And those just aren't good teams, right? I mean, Chicago are someone that's been better as of late, but definitely aren't a top team in the league, and Detroit and Orlando are two of the worst teams in the league. And so that tells you the company they're in as far as their defensive stance goes. And I was talking about this in the Dallas Mavericks video because Dallas have an even worse defense than the Denver Nuggets, and that's no surprise to anyone, but they also have a more electric offense when they're on, although their offensive efficiency doesn't say that this season. But the Denver Nuggets are going to have to improve their defense. I don't know whether that comes via trade, or whether that comes via buyout, or whether that comes via internal development and schemes and effort come the playoffs. But you need to at least be a top half defense in this league to be able to be competitive, as far as pushing for a title. You do. If your offense is the elite of the elite, and Denver is one of the elite offenses, you can get away with just being a top half defense. But you can't get away with being a bottom half defense with an elite offense. You just can't. Even the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets have an elite offense. But if Brooklyn come into the playoffs and they're sitting as like the 25th best defense in the league, and that's how they play in the playoffs, it's just not going to happen, right? But their defense has definitely improved as of late. They're making their way up the defensive efficiency train. There was a point in time when they were last, and they're now at 23rd. And they're making their way up. They're improving. They're making adjustments. They're going as a unit. And that's something that this Denver group is going to have to do, especially because Brooklyn is able to do that even more so and struggle a little bit more on defense because their offense is just that much more elite. Now, there's no doubt Denver's offense is good, but no one's offense is as good as the Brooklyn Nets, and it never will be within this season. It's just not feasible because that offense is just on a completely other level with the talent and star power they have on that team. I have no doubts Denver can be a competitive team this season. I just don't see them as a contender. I can see them as a 4 to 5 seed. I can maybe see them getting to the second round again. But as of right now, I'm still sticking to what I said about them at the start of the year. I said at the start of the year in my season preview video for this Denver Nuggets team that they were not going to be a absolute top seed, but I figured they'd still do good in the regular season again, and they would probably find themselves in and around the top 4 and the top 5 because they tend to be a good regular season team. That's just what they do. It's similar to the Raptors pre-Kawhi Leonard. They're always just a good regular season team that is in and around those top few seeds. But I don't think the team is constructed to win in the playoffs. They don't have a good defensive center. They don't have an elite wing defender. And you really need that. You really need to have success in the playoffs, especially in the Western Conference with all of the elite wings that are there. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, LeBron James. You need that, right? You're going to have to go through those players, those teams, to be able to get through. Luka Doncic being another one as well. You're going to need that wing defender, and a defensive center is always valuable. And I'm not saying that a good defensive center is more valuable to winning than Nikola Jokic. But if that star player of the caliber of Jokic was on the wing and they had a good defensive center, this Denver team would be better. That's essentially what I'm saying. That's just the way it breaks down to it. Wings are more valuable to winning. An all-star wing is always going to be more valuable than an all-star center. They just have more ways they can impact the game. Unless Nikola Jokic had the dribbling of a wing. He doesn't. He doesn't have the dribbling and the take a guy to the basket ability. And he would still have to then be alongside a defensive center. And that's not there. And so that's my concerns with this Denver team. I still think this is a really good team. I think they'll continue to improve throughout the regular season. But I'm still sticking to my prediction that this is a team that is losing in the first round. I hope I'm wrong. I like this Denver team. I'm not a Denver hater, and I'm not saying this because I don't like Denver, so I want them to lose in the first round. I like Denver as a team. I like Jamal Murray. I like Nikola Jokic. I like what they have here as an organization, but I don't think this team as currently constructed are built to be a playoff team. I just don't think they are. And I'd love to be proven wrong. But the way I see it is I don't think this team has the defense for it. And as I've mentioned before, when we look at the playoffs last year, sure, they had a good playoff run last year. They came back against Utah and they were able to beat the Clippers. But if they don't come back against Utah and they lose Game 5 of that series, we look at this Denver team completely differently coming into this season than if they didn't end up coming back in that series. Now, obviously they did, and that speaks to a testament of their ability to fight back in the playoffs, twice coming back down 3-1. But there's also a scenario in which you look at this team very differently, and I kind of see the issues in where we do have to consider that, and this team maybe isn't as great as we think they are. With that being said, that's my thoughts on the Denver Nuggets. If you guys do disagree, probably understandable, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you guys did enjoy, feel free to leave a like down below and subscribe if you were new, and I will see you guys in the next one.